Welcome back to another episode of Inside Jacobs Music Center as we get closer and closer to our opening date of September 28th. I'm Martha Gilmer. I'm President and CEO of the San Diego Symphony Orchestra, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Bob Knight, who is the curator of the organ here, one of our most famous features. And Bob has been really intent over the last 2 years, maybe more, on the restoration and cleaning of this instrument, and is here to talk to you a little bit about why it is so important and why it's so unique. So Bob, how long have you been doing this, and how did you get involved in this really specialized
I started
field?
out as a child holding the flashlight, or at that time the drop light with a cord for my father.
So he was an organ tuner as well?
Both my father and grandfather apprenticed as organ builders when they were young, and later went on to other things, but kept doing organ work a little bit of organ work kind of as a hobby.
So you really came at it from your youth.
Yes.
And are there a lot of organ curators in this world? Do you talk to each other? And
Most of us know each other. The pool's dwindling all the time. It's getting fewer and fewer people. It's kind of depressing when we go to the conventions and things, and I'm the young guy.
Hi, I'm Bob Knight. I'm the organ curator for the San Diego Symphony. Every time the organ's used, whether it's a rehearsal or performance, I'm here with the organ. I get the console out, I turn the organ on, I get it ready. My ancestor Thomas Knight apprenticed with John Byfield, who was the organ builder for King George III of England. Organ building encompasses almost every construction skill there is. You got to solder and electrical and woodwork, so it's good to know all those things. My dad worked on organs, including this one. He was part of the theater organ group that maintained it in the 70s, so when I was 7 or 8 years old, I spent lots of hours sitting out there at the console holding keys for him tuning in the dark hall. If you don't think that's scary for an 8-year-old sitting out there in the dark in the big hall. This organ was built in 1923 by the Robert Morton Organ Company in Van Nuys. It's a real genuine California organ. So this organ was more of an orchestral organ. It was a design that was popular from the 1890s to 1920s, and they were designed for playing organ transcriptions of orchestral pieces. In the 1950s, they made the organ a lot more theatery. When we were built it about 15 years ago, we jazzed it up a lot more, so it's really a top theater organ now. So this is the organ console. It's made out of Cuban mahogany, which you can't get anymore. It's very distinctive. Every one of the keys and every one of these stops is a different sound. These are covered in walrus ivory. They're not elephant ivory. In the 1920s, it must have been easier for Robert Morton in California to get walrus ivory from Alaska than it was to get elephant ivory from Africa. So most of the Robert Morton organs have walrus ivory keys. The longer the pipe, the lower the note, because the sound waves is longer. So the biggest pipes are the lowest tones, and the little tiny pipes, have higher. The percussion instruments in the organ are actually real Deagon orchestral percussions. They're laid out chromatically, and they have a little pneumatic action, each one, that the hammer strikes the bar. And so here we have a xylophone, and up above are orchestra bells. The theater organ was built to play popular music of the time. This organ certainly has a very generous complement of everything. It's got a snare drum, a tap drum, a bass drum, it's got all kinds of cymbals. There on the wall you can see we've got a fire bell, it's got all kinds of sound effects, and a car horn. But of course, because this organ was built in 1923, the car horn isn't a car horn like we now expect a car horn. Is one of the Uga car horns, like a Model T. The pipes are in this room, and these swell shades open up to let the sound out. So the organist has a pedal in the middle of the console that he pushes down, and the farther down he pushes it, the more of these open and the more sound gets let out. But you can be playing full organ and close these, and it gets real quiet. There's a lot of exciting things we've been able to do because of the building renovation. We decided to open up these 3 arches here to allow better tonal egress of the organ, so it'll make a big difference for the musicians and the conductor being able to hear the direct organ sound as opposed to hearing the sound bouncing off the balcony.
Tell us a little bit about why you're excited. Here we are standing in this room where the organ pipes are surrounding us. Why are you excited to bring this organ back?
Well, for one thing, this is a tremendous organ. It's always been the largest theater organ in town, and we've expanded the size recently, and we're adding more to it right now as part of this work. And we're opening more tonal egress for the organ. Before, it was always difficult for the organist to hear the organ on stage because the tone openings were very far out in the house, and all the organist heard was reflected sound off the balcony wall, and also being in the musicians of the orchestra, they really couldn't hear very well. And now with these arch openings, it'll give a direct line of sight tonal egress of the organ to the conductor and the organist and the musicians. They'll be able to hear it much better, which will make much better music making.
Where will the console be when an organist is playing?
Usually they put the console off to one side when it's part of the instrument in the orchestra. If it's an organ concerto, sometimes they put the organ on the piano lift, the console, so it can come up from the balcony. And of course all the silent films, it's in the pit and rises up dramatically at the beginning of the movie.
Now the history of this organ is an interesting one. It didn't start here, did it?
No. This organ was originally installed in the Balboa Theater a few blocks away. When this hall was built in 1929, it was still the biggest theater organ in town, and the same company owned both theaters. And so they thought instead, at that time, the Balboa had already changed to talkies, so they weren't really using the organ as much. And so they decided just to move the organ here to save them the expense of buying another new organ.
So it is the original and only organ that has been in this building?
That's correct. It's very unique in that it's the original organ to two different theaters.
Wow. I learned something today, not surprising. You mentioned a new portion of the organ, and you have found these pipes to be added.
What we're adding is really a small two-manual classical organ that will be part of the bigger organ. It can be used either by itself or in combination with the rest of the organ. The traditional classical organ is very vertical in tonal structure. There isn't much difference in timbre of the sounds, but the pitches are arranged in an octave above concert pitch, 2 octaves above, 3/4 in the harmonic train above. A symphonic organ like this is arranged like the orchestra. It's very horizontal in pitch. Almost all the instruments play at concert pitch, the same pitch as the piano, but there's a tremendous variety in the timbre of the pipes. And so with this, we're really combining the best of both. We'll have the vertical tone structure of the classical divisions, and we'll still have our original orchestral layout. This is the sound that is characteristic of the organ. It doesn't imitate anything else. It's not a flute or a violin or trumpet. It's an organ. And the theater organs typically had 1 or 2 diapasons. That's all we have in this organ now. Even though it was a very large theater organ, it only had 2 diapasons. And it didn't have any principal chorus of the pitches going up. And that's what we're adding is the classical organ principal chorus that go up at an octave above concert pitch, 2 octaves, and then a mixture that has the harmonics above it in 2 different varieties of those, so the organist can pick those for the more classical organ pieces. Pipes that tend to be real skinny, the air molecules rub against each other, and those create turbulence, and that's the harmonics of the pipe. So a pipe that's real skinny, the sound wave rubs against each other and is going back and forth, and makes a lot of harmonics, a real bright sound.
Wow. That's very different.
And then a pipe that's wider, the air doesn't rub against it so much, and it makes a
What
little
about
sound.
this one? This is a really unusual shape.
This is an English horn, and it's an orchestrally imitative pipe, and it's made, the conical portion is made to imitate exactly the orchestral English horn. And so it really does sound like an English horn.
And saxophone? Really?
Well, the saxophones,
That's
Maybe.
definitely the theater organ.
yeah. There's a lot of these, the orchestral and the jazz instrument stops we have, you don't find them at all in church organs.
Yeah, right.
So you can see this tuba pipe is nice and fat here, and it makes a big fat round sound. And so here we have this is an English post horn, and this is very skinny, and you can say the same size pipe, the same note. And that's what a difference in the harmonics the skinny resonator makes with the sound wave rubbing against each other.
And all the construction workers out there working must be hearing these
What
wild
the heck
sounds
are they
coming out.
doing?
It's great.
An elephant in there.
So I watched as they packed this organ up in boxes and was taken out really early in the construction process. Pipes are made out of different materials. Can you talk to us about that?
That's right. Most of the organ pipes are made out of a mixture of tin and lead. And if you can see maybe on this pipe right here, on this section. This is typical organ metal, and this is a mixture of tin and lead. The spots are tin, and the webbing is the lead. And when they mix the pipe metals, it doesn't really mix. It's kind of like Italian salad dressing, that the oil and the vinegar doesn't mix together. It's just kind of shaken up. And when the pipe metal cools, that's how it is. It's called spotted metal. And the smaller the spots are, the more tin it has. And so lead, this pipe is almost pure lead. Lead being much softer and denser than tin, typically all other things being equal, the more lead a pipe has, the more flute-like and sweeter tone it has, and the more tin it has, the more brighter or string-like tone it has.
Fascinating. Oh yeah.
And this pipe here is string pipe. This is almost pure tin.
Wow.
And some of the flue pipes are made out of wood. Again, there's different types of wood used. Typically, the average pipe is made out of, at this time, was made out of California sugar pine. Now they don't use it because all those trees have been cut down and turned into organ pipes. They use poplar now. But this pipe is a California sugar pine pipe, and they typically have a very sweet flute-like tone.
And this one is also California sugar pine?
Yes, it is.
But much
That's just a different type of. This is an open flute, more like a concert flute or orchestral flute.
That's beautiful. How has organ building changed when these new organs come into concert halls today? Do they build on this tradition? Are there changes or differences in construction?
Except for the electrical part of the organ has certainly advanced and kept up with the changes in electronic technology. And we recently, about 15 years ago, we completely renovated the electrical system of this organ to modern technology. But as far as the way the wind chests are made and the pipes, that technology has been static for at least 500 years, probably
Wow.
more like 1,000.
Have you been all over the world looking at organs?
I've traveled around quite a bit. It's amazing to see some of the old ones and think how old they are. The oldest pipe organ in the world that we know how old it is, that's still in constant use, was built in 1308. Wow. It's in a basilica in Switzerland. And to sit there and play that and think how many centuries it's been playing, and someone 500 years ago could have sat there and played that exactly like you're playing it now. It's really an incredible, it's almost like a time machine.
Wow. So parenthetically, I visited my grandmother's birthplace in Switzerland, went to the church where she was confirmed, and it was 1600s, and I got to play the organ.
Yeah.
They're beautiful little gems.
The organ is one of the few things that you can invest in or make a donation for that's going to last long beyond our lifetimes. This organ was built in 1923. Everyone who worked on it is long gone. Everyone who installed it is long gone, but the organ's still here playing, and we're still hearing the fruits of their work.
And it's going to sound better than ever now,
That's
as
right.
you said, with these new openings, so it'll be able to be heard not just by the audience, but by the organist who's backstage and behind the orchestra. We can get better balance and sounds. It's going to be the old made new.
That's right. It's my hope that when I'm long gone, people will still be here listening to this organ.
Well, we are so excited, and in January of this year we'll be doing a piece that you must love, the Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony, in which the organ has a glorious role in the last movement.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
I like the quiet movements too, because this organ has a lot of quiet, beautiful quiet sounds too. That'll be wonderful for the second movement.
Great. Bob, thank you so much for all the love and care you've put into this restoration, and we could not be more excited. I know you and I can't wait to hear it, and hopefully that's coming up in a few weeks. We are featuring it in the season, as I said, the Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony in January 10 and 11 will be a showcase for sure, but we'll have other opportunities between now and then, so we're very
Absolutely.
excited.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming to Inside Jacobs Music Center. Stay tuned for our next episode.